If your team got guaranteed money, tell them call me.
Whoop. Make me say, my. I done been around the world.
Yeah, I was made for this.
Player Performance with J.A. Cavalier.
Welcome to NBA Player Performance on this Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. 11 games on the card today. I have a beautiful hat on. I got two beautiful gentlemen with me, Junior Brown and Coach Rick. Junior Brown down in Costa Rica. What's going on, brother?
Can't disagree with anything you just said. Looking forward to this card today. Good to see you, Coach. Some really good games. The NBA has been giving us some good ones. Tomorrow there's only one game, so looking to take advantage of the big card today and get ahead of the market. Let's do our thing.
Coach, I saw some fire college football plays dropping tonight. I know you got the fire in the league as well. What's going on, brother?
Yes, sir. Some big action tonight. Coach is all over that. And, I like this big card tonight. Like Junior said, only one game tomorrow. So let's take advantage of this one tonight.
Absolutely. And getting straight into business. Two games in the New York area tonight. One at Madison Square Garden, one in Brooklyn. First one, we are going to Madison Square Garden. Bulls at Knicks. Throwing it to Junior. Bulls on the road have been abysmal early. They are on the road. It will be early. Knicks tonight in the first half, -4.5.
Yeah, so the Knicks are the fifth best first half team just by net rating. So they're a +9, 8.8 in the first half. They're just behind the Boston Celtics, who we know for the last 2 seasons now running have been a dominant team in the first half. So more importantly to me, though, the Chicago Bulls defense has been absolutely atrocious in the first half of all of their games. They're the worst rated defense in the first half. And I just think that the Knicks, the only thing that they have going for them is their ability to put points on the board. And I think this number is just low enough or short enough from my vantage point for the Knicks to cover in the first half here based on the spot, especially with Zach LaVine out. I know that some people think he's a cancer, but if you understand the situation that he's in personally, he's auditioning for other teams. And it's not a coincidence in that spot he's having the most effective shooting season possibly of his career. I mean, half of his shots are threes. He takes about 7.5, 8 threes a game, and he's still shooting 52% from the field, 42% from three. You take that out of anybody's lineup, your offense is obviously going to suffer. And he's not doing it on a lot of shots, so the volume is low, the efficiency is there. Can these guys pick up the slack? Where's it coming from? So, with all of those things being said, Knicks first half is my play, official.
Yeah, you're talking about lackluster shooting. I'm hoping they're not too lackluster tonight because I'm playing the over officially at 227.5. And this is really a great buy low for both teams. The Knicks are 5-5 versus the over, so right on the average. But I think zooming in further, 0-3 versus the home over. So a buy low there. And it's a 3rd and 4 back-to-back off a real defensive battle in Philadelphia last night, where I think night 2, fatigued legs will speak to a much more wide-open game. And the Knicks actually are 3-1 versus the over this year, coming off of an under in the previous game. And they did go over this year against Atlanta. Key point, Atlanta and Chicago, first pace and third pace, stylistically very similar. And we've been buying overs with Chicago all year. Chicago's coming off of an under, a total melt against Cleveland, only 45 points in the fourth quarter. It's where you want to buy low. Chicago off an under, 3-0 versus the over. And go back to last year, 4 matchups, 2 unders early season, 2 overs late season. Books are moving this line up significantly, open at 231. Speaking of 244 points tonight, should be a showcase game at Madison Square Garden. Junior on the first half, Knicks -4.5. A very sharp look there. I'm on the over at 227.5. Coach, any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I would agree with your take on the over. Another stat, Chicago also 4-2 to the over when they're playing on the road. They're going to play at a high tempo. They're going to try and push it, and they actually remind me. I mean, it's kind of like the Washington Generals, right? Lining up against the Globetrotters. and they're just, playing some token defense. That's what Chicago looks like, and I think they can push it to the over tonight.
Yeah, I mean, defense optional 100%. And as I said, in this fatigue
Yeah.
spot for the Knicks, they're going to play a wide open game. So buy the over, buy the first half. Let's cash these tickets. Staying in New York City, Brooklyn, New York, taking the subway just to the east and just south, I believe. And we're looking at a bunch of plays in this game. Throwing it to Junior, a play last night that barely lost, going under, unfortunately, on the Boston team total. Staying the course of action, night two, second leg back to back, potentially less defense and a more open game flow. Looking at Boston team total over 113.5.
Yeah, you mentioned staying the course. I mean, the correct decision with a poor outcome is still a correct decision. And I think that at 113.5, you're giving me a number that I'm going to have to bet for a team that's going to average 120 points a game, right around there during the course of the season. If you want back-to-back data, obviously you have to go to last year because the season is still young. The Celtics played 14 times in back-to-back situations, and they averaged 123.4 points per game on the second night of a back-to-back, and they went 12-2. So coming off of a loss, you can expect this team to be, ready to go, put in their best effort, which is why I have them on the team total, as well as the first quarter, first half. As I guess it's like I was telling Shark, an unorthodox trifecta. But I like the Celtics 3 times. They're the team that cashes the most tickets, and until that changes, I'm going to keep betting on them. Not blindly, but I think that coming off of a loss, with the intensity that their coach continues to display in how he manages his team, I think that they're going to come out with their best effort, and they're just a lot better than this Brooklyn team, who is an improved team, but they're not going to be able to keep up with the Celtics team early. Although Brooklyn late, which is why I'm not on the full game, I do worry that Brooklyn, because they continue to fight, might be able to keep it close late. But in the first half, first quarter, and of course team total, I love the Celtics.
Yeah, I mean, you're leading me into it. Well, we're wearing this hat for good reason. Was just talking to Jay Cavalier off the air. He doesn't like the pink. I like the pink, and I like Jordy Fernandez and these young Nets. Taking them at 9.5 for 1 unit here. And when you really start to look at this matchup, I think this is a terrible spot for Boston. I certainly understand Boston lost one of the most egregious ATS outright losses in league history yesterday, minus 16.5, losing to Atlanta. But now you got to travel. Third and four, back to back on the road, fatigue, and truthfully, a spot where Brooklyn is playing fantastic basketball in this season. 4-0 ATS at home on a weekday, 5-1 ATS versus playoff teams from last year, 7-1 ATS as a dog. And key point here, Boston's only lost a few ball games this year. They did lose to the Warriors last Wednesday on November 6th. They came back the next game in the supposed bounce back game and only beat Brooklyn by 4 points in overtime. So just because Boston just lost doesn't mean they're going to come back with a Super Bowl effort here. This is 82 games, 6.5 months, not the spot you want to buy. And as I mentioned, these teams did just play last week. Brooklyn really dominated that game. 51 rebounds to only 39. Boston brought a really lackadaisical effort to that game, shooting 59% of their field goals from the three-point line. This line is short, 13.5 at home, only 9.5 on the road. I have this game graded to be around 8 points, and truly, I think it could be closer than that. Coach, any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with you. You make a lot of great points about Brooklyn, which is why I would concur with Junior. I actually like the Celtics in the first quarter, just from a coaching perspective. I know you mentioned the bounce back thing, and the bounce back thing, it's greater in sports like football, where you got a week off to reminisce, right, and get fired up and go out and pound somebody. But I think Missoula, as a head coach, like he is on these guys, and I would agree with Junior. They're going to come out and play well early, and that first quarter spread's less than a bucket. I mean, Boston actually hasn't covered a first quarter spread in the last 3 games, so I think they do come out. They play well. They're on fire early. That's why I like the first quarter -2.5.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree there. This is a nice buy low. Of course, I did take the loss yesterday, thinking they would come out well against Atlanta. Now they go on the road. They need to set the table early here. Just one final point on this from a mentality standpoint. You're talking about Joe Mazzulla, obviously coming out of West Virginia under Bob Huggins, a total dog mentality. This guy, Jordy Fernandez, came up with the Cavs in the LeBron James era in 2009, was an assistant with the Nuggets under Brendan Malone, a real notorious New Yorker, real hard-on type of guy, and is the head coach of the Canadian men's national team, who exhibited great defense in international play this summer. So he can match that dog mentality of Joe Mazzulla. I truly wouldn't be surprised if Brooklyn won this game outright tonight. I feel like it's a really dead zone spot for the Celtics. A lot of conversation, couple officials. Junior on the team total over for the Celtics, 113.5, and I am on Brooklyn plus 9.5. Staying in this metro area in the Northeast, a lot of games this evening on Wednesday within this conference. Interesting games, a lot of moving parts in Philadelphia tonight. You saw it last night. Joel Embiid, first game of the year. No Tyrese Maxey, of course. The first game ever being played between Joel Embiid and Paul George. So many moving parts. I am having trouble figuring this out. However, Junior has something figured out, we believe, taking the under at 218.5.
Yeah, for me, the MO for the Cleveland Cavaliers isn't going to be offense when variance catches up to every team, right? Because we're still in the stage of having a small sample size of games for everybody. So I don't want to make any sweeping declarations about Cleveland, even though their offense looks unstoppable. Their defense is back to where it needs to be, and I think that's why, for me, the play here is the under. I think that the way that they're going to approach this one, combined with the lack of continuity for Philadelphia, J.A. the boss was talking about it with us before we went live, that Embiid doesn't look comfortable. Let's just going to say that, right? And we got to understand one thing. I don't usually talk about mentality as much as my boy Shark does, but in this situation, I think it applies. Joel Embiid doesn't have a physical injury. He said that there's nothing wrong with his leg, technically, by according to doctors. He just doesn't trust his leg. So if he doesn't trust his own body, it's going to affect the way he plays, the way he approaches games, and it's going to affect the rest of the team because they follow his lead. And if his lead is that of an uncertain player, I'm not really sure what you're getting from Philly here. So everything points to me to a Cavs victory, but the Cavs are not going to run the table, right? So at some point, variance is going to catch up with them as well. I can't just be blindly betting these big spreads with the Cavaliers, but I can bet on the fact that they're going to come out and play defense and be intense about it, combined with the fact that Philadelphia's offense is definitely at least subpar until further notice.
Yeah, I think this is really just a great statistical conversation, because when you see Cleveland here 12-0 straight up, as you mentioned, at some point they're going to give a game or two away, probably 15 to 20 if we're being honest, throughout the duration of the 82. And Philadelphia is absolutely a buy low here, 2-8 straight up, 2-8 ATS. But I don't know if this is their spot. I really don't. Back to back, tough game last night, a lot of physicality against the Knicks. And now you got to come back against this Cleveland team who is potentially just going to dominate. Coach, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Junior, and it reminded me of a quote that I tell quarterbacks a lot. Indecision is a decision. So when you've got a guy on the floor like Embiid who's indecisive, that's detrimental for the entire team. Plus the fact Cleveland's very good on defense, and I don't have an official play on this game, but it might be worth a look at Philadelphia's team total. I think it's at 104.5. In a slow-paced game where the numbers are telling us it's probably going to go under, that Philly team total is worth a look.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't disagree. I like that comment quite a bit. Indecision is a decision. Be pragmatic, intelligent, make decisions, and move. Junior, you have a comment here.
Yeah, and on top of what Coach says, the Cleveland Cavaliers are one of the few teams that have multiple big guys that can defend Embiid, right? They can throw Mobley on him. Even though Mobley is smaller than Embiid, he's one of the best one-on-one defenders in the league, period. And then you've got Jared Allen, who can match him in terms of height and athleticism. So it's not going to be easy for Embiid. We don't know what Paul George is going to be like on a back-to-back because, again, obviously he's healthy now, but he didn't really have the preseason and the lead up to the season. He's just working his way into shape now. He played pretty well against the Knicks, but can he do that on a back-to-back situation? We don't really know. No Tyrese Maxey. So not to be long-winded, I just really like the under here. And I really actually like Coach's look on the team total under for the Sixers as well.
Yeah, and I think you're making an extremely noteworthy point, too, about the rosters. No Tyrese Maxey. This game is really difficult to handicap ATS-wise because there's been no roster consistency dating back to last year with these groups. 4 matchups last year. No Donovan Mitchell in the first one. No Embiid in the second one. No Mitchell and Embiid in the third one. No Embiid in the last one. And now you have no Maxey, Embiid, and Paul George. If there's any game to handicap tonight from an ATS perspective, I think this could be the most difficult because there's just zero roster consistency. However, Junior taking the under at 218.5. Speaking of roster consistency, I think we're finding an interesting dynamic tonight in Milwaukee where in yesteryear, you would have said Detroit is the more inconsistent roster. I think you could make the argument that Milwaukee falls into that category now more so than the upstart Pistons. Coach lives in the area. He loves that Detroit team. I love the Detroit team. My guys before the show were saying I should basically have a financial stake in the franchise because I bet them every single night. I'll throw it to the coach for some remarks. Detroit plus 5.5.
Yeah, I would lean Detroit plus 5.5. I know the number has moved. I mean, what's not to like? They're playing great defense. Bernie Bickerstaff, I always remember his quote, "Hey, we're going to start with defense." And they live up to that night in and night out. They're 7-3 ATS in their last 10. Milwaukee has only covered 5 of their last 16 games in which they've been the favorite. Initially I was thinking maybe Milwaukee bounces back, and I was looking at their team total, and Damian Lillard might not play, so for me, I'm staying off of this one, but I would lean toward Detroit covering the spread tonight.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to get officially on this this afternoon. So I think it's a great look. And taking Detroit here plus 6.5. And, as I mentioned, this is just a spot you want to continue to buy Detroit. 5-7 straight up, 8-3-1 ATS. This group is absolutely coming together under JB Bickerstaff. You saw it last night. They blew a late lead to the Heat. Tyler Hero back-to-back-to-back threes to send the game to overtime. A team that did not have good mental fortitude would have gotten blown out in overtime after that type of late melt. They didn't. They got it together and they fought and they won the game. And that's a snapshot to who this team is. And when you find this spot, which is a home road back-to-back, people are saying you went to overtime yesterday, now you let down. But we're talking about the mental fortitude. This team has not let down on the back end of back-to-backs this year. 2-0 ATS, very impressive. Covered at home against Boston on Sunday, October 26th, lost by 6 in a real tight one. And I think even more impressively, on November 4th, blew out the Lakers at home outright, 115-103 on the same line construction. Lakers minus 6.5. So when books see a team like the Lakers, ex-champion, Milwaukee, ex-champion, on a back-to-back versus Detroit, they're laying the same number. And Detroit performed incredibly well, covering by 18.5 points against the Lakers in this spot. And you talk about this divisional matchup. Milwaukee has dominated this matchup for years. 9-0 straight up last 9. It's a 9X revenge game. This entire early window with the Pistons is a revenge tour. They are turned up at a high level of mental focus. And I think this is where Milwaukee is in shambles. I don't think Damian Lillard fits with this group. I think Giannis is angry and might want to move on. I think Doc is the wrong coach. I think this team potentially peaked 3 years ago. I think their role players, if I'm being perfectly honest, are not as good as the Detroit role players. I think Detroit could have a deeper and better roster in this game outside of Giannis Antetokounmpo. And just going through the lines in this game, last year's lines, 12.5, 16.5, 13.5, 12.5. So books are moving this heavily towards Detroit, like they've been doing all year. I truthfully think that Detroit could win this game tonight outright by 5 points. Buying this one officially at 6.5 and staying at the early window here. A couple games that we want to discuss as we try to give you guys top angles on every game. 7 o'clock in Orlando, Kia Center. Pacers playing the Magic. Third time this year already. We're never entirely sure why the league schedules the way it does, but these teams are already playing for the third time in the third week. The home team is 2-0 straight up, 1-1 ATS. Revenge game Magic. I faded the Magic incorrectly last night. I thought Charlotte would compete. They did not. Now the Magic got to come back. Pacers moving parts. Junior, any thoughts on this game?
Not really. I don't like these games where I have all these questions about teams. I know the Magic seem like they're getting things together because they have 3 wins in a row, but Shark, what I'm going to say in terms of quality of wins and losses. It's not about how many wins and losses you have. It's also about who you beat and who beats you. So congratulations to the Magic for beating the Pelicans, who are a walking disaster, the Wizards, who are one of the 2 worst teams in the league, and the Charlotte Hornets, who are have an average of 17 years old between their squad. You're not really beating anyone that's a real contender. So I'm not going to say I'm giving the Magic the benefit of the doubt. And then when I flip it to the Pacers side of things, they're the model of inconsistency right now. Every time they take 1 step forward, they take 2 steps back. They're 3-2 or 3-3 in their last 6. I don't know what they are. You know what I mean? They scored 132 points against the Knicks, and then they scored 83 points against the Hornets the game before that. So what are they? Too many questions, not enough answers. It's complete statement.
Yeah, and I think it really goes into something we have discussed at least a handful of times here on NBA Player Performance early season. This is a team that really went further than people thought last year, making the Eastern Conference Finals. So we have to make a very quick psychological adjustment to how they're going to take the first half of the season, either seriously or not. And you see Tyrese Halliburton being filmed for the Netflix show, total distraction, hanging out with new celebrities, really found some newfound exposure himself. So I think this is another distraction game. And key point on Orlando here. Yes, it is a back-to-back, but because the game had such margin last night, the Orlando starters only played anywhere from 20 to 32 minutes. So they're not going to be that fatigued. I think Orlando could actually sneak out a backdoor win here tonight. Coach, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think Junior mentioned to me, Indiana is consistently inconsistent. You know, one night they're on, one night they're off. I mean, that's why they're 5-5, I guess. Um, of note for Indiana, Nesmith and Nembhard both out. I think they're a little bit worse when those 2 guys aren't on the floor. You know, how can you get behind either one of these teams? I don't know. You mentioned that Orlando might have a shot coming back off a back-to-back. It's too hard for me to figure out how to play that. So I would stay away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you see a line here right around -2 open, some market movement as well. -1 for Orlando now. I mean, that's got to be sharp action. I don't think that any public bettors are backing Orlando on a back-to-back against kind of a public favorite team here with the Pacers. So I think Orlando is the sharp take in this game, and we will keep it moving. I think a surprising grease fire disaster game, unfortunately for many who are watching national TV here. 7:30 Eastern, actually a 6:30 tip time in Oklahoma City tonight. ESPN National, Thunder hosting the Pelicans. I mean, Coach, we talked about this Pelicans team the other day. Incomprehensible injuries. You rarely ever see a team at this point in the year with this level of injuries, missing almost every single principal player. Brandon Ingram is basically on an island by himself with G League players. Coach, any thoughts about this one?
Yeah, I mean, this is another tough one. And I've mentioned the sewage plant, right? In New Orleans, like the sewage plant. I don't know if there's going to be a big man on the floor. I mean, both teams are going to have to go small, which, if I could dive into it a little deeper, maybe I could get on a total here. You're going to play small. You think maybe faster pace, maybe some more scoring. Both teams kind of trend over. Yeah, maybe the over's worth a look, but with the rosters that these guys are going to put on the floor, I'd stay away from this one as well.
Yeah, I mean it's a very difficult game. There's no way around it. I think it's even accentuated to another point by the fact that Chet Holmgren now is out for 2 to 3 months because of a hip injury, and it's just the injuries in this league just piling up. And as we mentioned the other day, when these guys don't play, they actually incur more injury risk on themselves because they're not physically conditioned for ball. And it really is, I think, a scheme gone awry and backwards, that load management idea. Junior, any thoughts about this game?
It's a weird one because, like Coach mentioned, I don't really like to blindly say, oh, because they're going small, it's going to be an over. But if you just look at the games that Oklahoma City's played since Chet's been out, their defense has fallen off a cliff. Now, they're still ranked number one overall in the NBA because they started off so insanely hot defensively that they had like a big gap. But if they continue to play defense the way they are right now, they're going to start losing some games because teams are shooting like the other day they played against. Let me just pull this up real quick. When they played against the Clippers, who are not an offensive juggernaut, the Clippers' effective field goal percentage was almost like 70%. They couldn't miss against these guys, and it's because they were able to get to the basket. You got to know that last season the Oklahoma City Thunder were, I think, the second or third worst rebounding team in the league with Chet in the lineup. So without Chet, that's going to go so far the other way that we're going to have to be careful. Now tonight, as Coach mentioned, because the Pelicans have no big men, it might not come to fruition in that sense. The over actually really might be the play. I think the Oklahoma City team total is definitely worth a look as well because the Pelicans have no continuity. You just got a bunch of guys that you just thrown together because you just don't have anybody else to play. So that's not a recipe for consistent defense because, as Coach knows, defense is really more about effort and communication than it is about skill, and they don't have the communication and they don't have the experience right now with these guys that they have on the floor.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, this is just a tough game. I mean, I think within this window with Oklahoma City, you've seen them really just blow out teams on these numbers. Particularly last year when you saw OKC laying this 14 and a half. I remember there was a game against the Blazers. I think they won by like 60 plus points. They
Literally.
really do have the ability to just obliterate teams. And again, I think it goes to that motivational angle like we discussed with Detroit. OKC is just always pissed off. I mean, they put on a good show in the post game with all the guys on the court doing the group interviews. Don't let that fool you. The competitive nature of these guys is absolutely top. And until they win an NBA championship, they will not be taking their foot off the gas in any regular season games. So you always want to stay the course with OKC. And as we said, this New Orleans team is just an absolute disaster right now. Another game at 8 o'clock here. No officials, but definitely good conversation. Clippers at the Rockets. Clippers running a clean sheet on the road. 4-0 ATS. I was looking at it. I am very surprised by that. No Kawhi Leonard, no Paul George. James Harden and a bunch of guys performing well. And, as we look at it, maybe this is better for James Harden. James Harden's best years came by himself effectively as the 1A guy with the Rockets. So maybe he's now more in his comfort zone and they're performing well. And truthfully, this is actually a Clippers line here. This is a short home line for the Rockets. They are leaning this to the Clippers. I could only lean to the Clippers in this game, as surprising as that may sound for many, knowing how much I like this young Rockets team under Ime Udoka. But I'll throw it to Junior. Junior, any thoughts on this game?
Yeah, I don't. You've known me for a long time. You gotta admit when you don't know, and I just don't know how to handicap the Clippers right now. I grew up in the Toronto area, so I kind of have an affinity for the Raptors. Like, I'll watch a lot of their games. I watch a lot of Norm Powell in my life. I'm not really sure he can keep up this pace. He's literally one of the 10 best offensive players in the NBA right now. Like, to this point in the season, and it's like at some point that's going to have to slow down. And combine that with James Harden's ball dominance. He's playing very well, but he's averaging like 5 turnovers a game because every single thing they do that's positive and negative goes through him. So you're so highly dependent on two guys who have a ton of variance because, again, is Norm Powell really going to continue to score 25 points a game on like 50 something percent shooting? He's like playing out of his mind. And if there's one team that's built to stop what Norm Powell can do, it's Houston. Houston literally has like 4 different guys on their roster that can match up one-on-one with Norm Powell and James Harden. So I just don't love the spot for the Clippers, but what you said does have validity. The Clippers defense, first of all, is for real. And it's not like the Houston Rockets offense is great. So if you just want to start from that, the Clippers defense has been more consistent than the Houston offense. So I do see why you would lean Clippers in that situation. I just don't have enough answers to give you, which is why I don't have a play.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're great. I think you're making a great point here. I think the under is potentially the best look in this game. And as you mentioned, Ty Lue, we've said it before, Jeff Van Gundy, an assistant, well known in the 90s for coaching the Knicks and the Rockets at a later point in time. I'm not entirely sure how much that's going to motivate the Clippers tonight, having Jeff Van Gundy in a revenge game against the Rockets on the road. But potentially anecdotal, but you never know with these guys showing up for their assistant coach versus his old team. But on the under, the last time these teams played, the last two, March 6th and April 14th, egregious overs versus this number 122 to 116, 116, 105. And books are agreeing with this, moving the number down from 222.5 to 217.5. I have this game to hover right around 212 points. I honestly think Houston might win this game. From an ATS perspective, I think this is one of the sharper games of the night. I think this is your classic NBA environment where the home team could win outright, but not cover a short spread. It's going to be tight. Coach, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, like Junior said, sometimes you got to admit when you just don't have anything, you don't have a play. But I do know defense can win games. And sometimes, maybe you only have one dude, and that one dude is just enough to push you over the top, especially when you do play good defense. Plus, some numbers back it up. I mean, the Clippers are 4-1 against the spread in their last 5. I think they've covered 5 of their last 6 on the road. So I think you're going to see a tight game, and that would help me lean towards the under, which the under is 7-3 in the Clippers' last 10. I would agree with you on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of unders, my next official play, we're going to San Antonio, taking the under between the Spurs and the Wizards at 224.5. And truthfully, when I was looking at this game, I wasn't really expecting to come up with an official play, but I started to look at the total dynamic, and I was actually pretty blown away by Washington's inefficiency to score the basketball. Because in my mind, I had this vision of Washington being high scoring, high pace, just these wild, high scoring games. Outside of a couple games in the division against Atlanta, who we discussed before has a top 3 pace, they've gone under consistently this season. And it pretty much is Jordan Poole, Kyle Kuzma, and a bunch of rookies, journeymen, and fringe G League type of players. This is probably the worst roster in the league, top to bottom. And I think they have no path to success or scoring the basketball. This is a late portion of a road trip. This team is averaging only 96.7 points per game on this road trip. And you saw it in the last game they played at Houston, 107 to 92 Houston on an inflated Houston favorite line. And this is the same dynamic with this San Antonio team, laying a pretty noticeable, maybe even egregious, you could say, 8.5, 9 points to Washington. And when you see a team like San Antonio laying such a big number and a short total, it speaks to a margin win where the underdog just doesn't score. And if you look at the matchups last year, this is great numerical stuff from the books. 2 matchups last year, both in January. Spurs at Washington, 131 to 127, over 241.5. So books had an over number. They went over, came back to San Antonio, another 241.5. It did go under, but it was a bit of an outlier. Still high though, 118 to 113. So now you go from 241.5 twice, opening line 222.5. That's a 19-point jump. It's the biggest total jump on the entire board. It's an incredibly noteworthy story. I honestly think this game is going to play similar to the Houston game we just discussed with Washington. Right around 200 points total in this game. I see the Spurs winning this game somewhere around like 105 to 95 tonight. I think it's going to be a real throwback style of game. And final point, San Antonio is playing great defense this season in the second year with Wemby. Junior, I know you talked about that the other day, the Spurs level of defense this season. Can you give us some commentary on that?
Yeah, I just think that the continuity thing is just really important for them in the sense that they understand better what they can get away with Wemby as the protector, right? If you have an elite shot blocker behind you, you tend to be a more confident defender because you know he can clean up your mistakes. I think you're starting to see some of that. You're also starting to see some guys like Castle, who coming out of UConn was actually known for his defense, and guys like that are getting more minutes. So now you have competent wing defenders, a competent big man defender. I think things are coming together for them. They're still not a good basketball team, but I think to your point, because they have a foundation of defense, they can pick up more wins where the general public might not expect them to because they're not noticing the trends that we obviously make our living noticing. Which is the fact that San Antonio last year was one of the 5 worst defensive teams in the league, even though they had Wemby, and now that's completely flipped on their head due to them having a very good coach and a little bit of more continuity with their roster situation. And of course, they brought in some adults, right? They brought in a Harrison Barnes. They got a CP3 who's more of a leader who can get guys where they need to be. Even those guys are advanced in their careers. The fact, I just mentioned this before, defense is about communication and about IQ and effort, and those guys bring all of those things. So you're just seeing all that come together.
Yeah, it really is the best under on the board, in my opinion. It's a margin under, which is a very kind of paradoxical, bizarre statement. Margin under. I think we're going to see 205 points at the absolute max. Coach, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would add, having Wemby back there allows the Spurs to be more aggressive defensively as well.
Yeah.
But I noticed one thing: the Wizards team total is 107, and they've scored under 100 in 2 games in a row. We all know there's roster troubles. Like, how are they going to how are they getting to 108 tonight? I think San Antonio holds teams to 104, 105 a game. That team total might be worth a look, and I would concur with your take on the under.
Yeah, and you talk about that line. The last 2 times these teams played, Washington did score 127 and 118. So it's actually books are telling you they're going to plummet versus recent matchup history. So unders across the board in this one. Let's dominate. Next play, big game here in Los Angeles. Crypto.com, 10 o'clock ESPN. We said the first ESPN game is a disaster. The second one, unfortunately, does not feature Ja Morant, but it is far more entertaining. Coach has an official play here. I certainly co-sign it. Coach, looking at the Lakers minus 6.5 with an official play.
Yeah. Lakers are at home. No Ja Morant on the other side. Lakers are the only team left in the NBA that is unbeaten against the spread at home. They're 5-0 ATS there. Anthony Davis is tearing it up. I actually like his point prop. I know we don't have our prop master today, but Anthony Davis over 27.5 points. He's done that in 7 of his last 9. With 2 days off, AD has gone off, man. He scored 35 and 37. And if you want to count the season opener, I think he had 36 on opening night. So I think he puts it together, and the Lakers get it done against a Ja Morant-less lineup. Lakers minus 6.5.
I agree. Switching hats here to my OG Lakers print. And the buy hat is engaged. As I said, total alignment here with Coach, taking minus 6.5 here for 1 unit. And you said it. This is incredible polarization with the Lakers. They are great at home, and they are terrible on the road. 5-0 ATS at home, 0-5 ATS on the road. And I think this is really more than just LeBron and Anthony Davis and this roster. This is JJ Redick. JJ Redick is a really elite motivator. And great motivating coaches always have their teams prepared at home specifically. And I don't think it's going to change tonight at all. I think it's a great spot to sell Memphis. Memphis playing without Ja Morant is actually 2-0 straight up in ATS last two. And if you look at what they're doing and who they're playing against, it's just disastrous opponent quality versus Washington. We just talked about Washington. Memphis 128, Washington 104. Significant favorite for Memphis, minus 7.5. And at Portland, a total obliteration on Sunday afternoon, 134 to 89, also as a favorite. So Memphis 2-0 ATS, two blowouts versus two bottom feeders, both as a favorite. Now the environment shifts to the Lakers, and you do find a Lakers revenge game here, having lost at Memphis last Wednesday night on the 6th by margin, 131 to 114. And there's not a lot of matchups tonight where the teams are already playing the second matchup of the year. This will be in the minds of the Lakers. We're not going to lose to these guys twice. We want to hammer down on these guys. And I think a really key point on this, last year, the Lakers did play Memphis twice when Ja Morant was out of the lineup, but they did play Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane. And in those two games, the Lakers won by margin both times. 134 to 107 at home. Key point, same exact line, minus 6.5. And on the road, minus 3.5, 136 to 124. I think you're going to see a very similar game to those two totals. It's going to be a high-scoring game. I have the Lakers to win this game by somewhere around 16 points. Buy, hat, engage, collab with Coach. Junior, do you agree, disagree, or any thoughts?
No play on this game for me. PTSD from watching the Lakers road trip where defense just abandoned them. Here's the thing. So if I was gonna say something like negative about the play that you guys like, it would be that the Grizzlies are the best transition offense in the league in terms of points per possession, and the Lakers are dead last in transition defense. Now, fortunately for you guys, there's no Ja Morant, who clearly has a lot to do with the Grizzlies being number one in transition offense, right? And plus, the combination of Ja Morant and Scottie Pippen Jr., because that was their secret sauce. They were able to bring Scottie Pippen Jr., who, has that weird stat now. He got a triple-double, so him and his dad, first father-son combo to ever get a triple-double. Scottie Pippen Jr. is a real basketball player. Like, he's actually really good if you look at his stats since Ja Morant's been hurt. And when they were able to play the two of them, they were able to get up and down. Without Ja Morant out there, that kind of totally changes things. So I think that from the standpoint of, if the Lakers aren't going to do this at home, then where's it going to happen? Because to Coach's point, they're a much, much different team at home versus the road, which should seem obvious, but a team of their makeup that's laden or filled with veterans, however you want to word that, shouldn't really have these wild swings home versus away. Good spot for you guys. 6.5 is a big number, though, so that's why I'm not on it.
Yeah, no, I really do think margin's going to come here tonight. And, I was just looking at something here, and I think this holds some weight as well.
I want to say one thing. Also a point in your guys' favor. Ja Morant made the mistake of talking super spicy about the Lakers. I hate them. I can't wait to see them again. Well, now you basically started a fight that you can't finish because now your teammates are going to have to deal with that because you're on the sideline. So the Lakers really might stomp them just because of that.
Yeah.
You read my mind. That was exactly what I was about to say. I'm looking at this article now, and it really is detailing this trash talk between these teams. Of course, met in the playoffs 2 years ago. Lakers knocked them out. Young Grizzlies, I think, just perpetually angry now, having basically given away an entire season last year to off-the-court issues and injuries. And it's just one quote after the next. Ja Morant, LeBron James, Desmond Bane, calling him old, too small, all this stuff. This is going to be a game tonight that really is going to have some playoff mentality to it. And I think the line is telling you that heavy strength. I think the Lakers are going to turn up here with emphasis. So on it officially at minus 6.5. Great conversation and a top play. Two more games on the board tonight. 10 o'clock in Portland. Back-to-back nights being played between the Wolves and the Blazers. To the surprise of many, including myself last night, Timberwolves just played an absolutely terrible game in the NBA Cup and lost by margin. 122 to 108 at Portland. This is a Portland team that had lost, as I just mentioned, by close to 50 points in their previous game against Memphis. How bad is Minnesota right now? And we talked about this yesterday, but Anthony Edwards, for all his talent and his budding superstar status is really kind of playing some lackadaisical ball right now. Not getting up and down, chirping a little too much, and shooting far too many three-pointers. I would like to suggest the bounce back has to come tonight. Portland last year had a sequence of games like this in their home gym where they did play the same team in 2 consecutive games, and I believe they did split almost every one of those environments. But based on that, I would lean towards Minnesota. I just don't know if Minnesota really cares right now. And I think to a certain degree, they're still suffering from the trade, having moved Towns to the Knicks and trying to integrate Randall and DiVincenzo. Junior, any comments on the psychology here of Minnesota or anything in this game?
I think that Minnesota's problem, if I'm just going to be honest, is that they, again, I said this yesterday, they don't have a point guard, right? So there's no one to bring order to them when they're out of order. I think to ask Anthony Edwards to do that, you're asking a lot. I'm not going to say I disagree with what you're saying about the threes, because I think the threes takes away from his aggressiveness. He's shooting under 5 free throws a game, which if you're going to be one of the elite players in the league, you probably want to be closer to 10 than 5. He's under 5 right now. But because he's shooting 45%, I mean, if you shoot 45% from 3, let me just do some math here. You're shooting like 68% from 2. So that's not what the problem is. You get what I'm saying? Like, his efficiency is literally through the roof. He's like one of the most efficient scorers in the whole league. His problem is he's got to do too much. He's got to be the shooting guard. He's got to be the point guard. They got to go get him a point guard and get the ball out of his hands and have him playing off the ball, not on the ball. That's what I think their problem is, personally.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of moving parts. I think maybe the coach is not connecting with the group. And as I mentioned, you're trying to integrate Julius Randle, notably heady with the Knicks for years. I think there's just a lot of moving parts. Coach, any thoughts here?
Yeah, I would agree with Junior. I mean, for me, you look at football. I mean, it's the quarterback, right? Basketball, it's teams that win championships. They got a great point guard. So when you don't have one, like how does this offense operate? And on that note, wasn't Minnesota a top 3, top 5 defensive team last year? Now, I know they're playing a little bit better defensively now, but I don't know. They're just not. They're not putting it together tonight. Man, I don't know how you get behind either one of these. I think the spread's at 10. That's a tough one. Portland on a back-to-back. Don't like that. Don't like the way Minnesota's playing. I'd stay away from this one too.
Yeah, and as we continue this discussion, both of these games have really been defined this year between these teams by the 3-point gap. This is the third matchup. Both were blowouts. Minnesota got them at home on November 8th on Friday night, 127 to 102. But key point there, Minnesota actually did win the 3-point gap in that game by 48 points. That is a massive, massive 3-point gap. And then last night, Portland reversed it to +9. So for Portland to win last night by 14 and reverse the environment from a blowout loss to a blowout win, the 3-point gap flipped by 57 points. Junior, did you have any comments on that?
Yeah, because I don't want to dismiss your point about shooting too many threes, right? Naz Reid, 50% of Naz Reid's shot attempts, 51% of Naz Reid's shot attempts are from 3 this season. Again, he's shooting an amazing percentage, but there comes a point where they're going to have to play a bit tougher. You're going to have to get down, get inside, get teams to foul you, get into the bonus, get free throws, get points while the clock is stopped, especially if you're going to be one of the teams that continues to have under 100 possessions a game. They play at a pace of like 98 possessions a game, which is bottom 10. So you're not getting enough possessions. You're jacking up a bunch of threes. You're not getting to the free throw line. That's going to come back to bite you in your ass at some point. So to Shark's point, they're going to have to dial it back with the threes, and they're going to need Dante DiVincenzo, who is supposed to be their 3-point specialist, to start making some. He's only shooting like 32% from 3. So it's just a bunch of moving parts, as Shark mentioned, which is leading to this. But here's the thing, though. Shark, as you said, how bad is Minnesota? Well, they're 6-4. They're winning 60% of their games, so it's not like they're horrendous. They're just below the standard that we expect from them so far this season.
Yeah, and I think that's just a great point for handicapping and something we haven't entirely discussed here, but I do want to mention we're going to have some great spots to buy low on contending teams in the coming months. There's a lot of great teams that have been far below their long-term average in the early window here. So you talk about some of the best spots that can develop, not only in basketball, but any sport. Very good teams playing terrible early season ball. We're going to be buying the Pelicans every night, the Grizzlies, the Sixers, the Bucks, the Knicks, the Wolves. I mean, this is great market stuff here for buy low. Junior, comment.
Shams alert. Joel Embiid and Paul George both out.
Okay. Wow.
Beautiful.
So I mean, this is what we said about that game. It's every time these teams play, there's massive names not playing in the game. I mean, it's insane, and it's a shame too because these are two of the top teams in the East theoretically. It's like, guys, come on, Coach. Any thoughts about Portland load management? Anything here?
Portland. Geez. I mean, what is there to like about Portland? I mean, they might as well line up with New Orleans right at the sewage plant, then hop on the train to get in a train wreck. I don't know. I can't get behind Portland. Can't get behind Minnesota. Neither one for me.
Yeah, I agree. It's a tough game. As I said, I'm sure there's going to be handicappers across YouTube, Instagram, X, the internet, the world, the universe, whatever, that are going to be all over Minnesota as a bounce back revenge. They have to. You would like to
Mhm.
think so. You would like to think so. I certainly wouldn't get on Portland tonight. I would like to see Minnesota show up here. I just don't know if we can trust them yet. So unfortunate, but a good conversation. Last game on the card here. 11 games tonight. Golden One Center, Sacramento, California. Rematch between the Kings and the Suns. They did play just a couple nights ago on Sunday night. A Kings victory in overtime. Now you get Phoenix road back to back. Big win in the NBA Cup last night in Utah. Junior called it correctly. Nice cover there. But now they got to go in this terrible travel spot. Kings inconsistent, a lot of moving parts. I'll throw it to Junior. You bought the Suns last night. Do you buy them again, or what's going on in this game?
Yeah, I don't know about all that. It's pretty difficult to be in the situation that they are without their best player. You're coming off, which is Kevin Durant, obviously. You're coming off a game where, okay, yeah, you won against an inferior team at altitude. The Kings are in your division. The difference between the Kings and the Suns is not significant, right? And then you have a couple of rest days before you go to play Oklahoma City and Minnesota back to back. I'm not going to say they overlook the Kings, but we've seen NBA teams literally punt games. If I was going to bet that on any game the Suns might punt, this one might be it. I guess I'm going to have to watch this game and see how the first half goes and maybe live bet it. But before the game, I just don't feel comfortable with this spot at all.
Yeah, and I mean, I haven't looked at the injury report, but I could definitely see them sitting some players tonight, and it could take on that star removal theory for the Suns if their backups decide to show up. But totally anecdotal. We're not entirely sure about the rosters. One thing that would lean towards the Kings here, in my opinion, other than the fact that Phoenix is in a brutal travel spot, the Kings really more than most teams in this league really do actually bounce back. Like we said with Milwaukee and some of these other teams, like they'll just cluster bad efforts. They don't really care. Like when the Kings lose, they immediately come back really juiced up. And they are coming off of a loss at the Spurs on Monday night, a game we had correctly right here on NBA Player Performance. Key point there, Sacramento was in a brutal spot, road back-to-back fatigue. Now they get a night off. They get to reset. They will be angry here. And as we said, they catch Phoenix now in the fatigue spot. So this is a complete environmental reversal for Sacramento from what happened on Monday night. And as we said, they just beat Phoenix on the road by 9 in overtime. Pretty heavy line here at -6.5. I think that does indicate strength for Sacramento, not value on the underdog for Phoenix here tonight. If I had to take something in this game, I would lean towards Sacramento. I think they win this game by right around 9 points. And I do think, just as a psychological point, always be aware certain teams really do bounce back way more transparently than others. Kings are a bounce back team. Coach, any thoughts on this game?
No, I would agree. I don't have an official play here, but Kings have not lost back-to-back games yet this season, and I don't think they do it tonight. We were talking. I'm just looking at the injury report. Durant is out. Beal is also questionable. Both
Oh
of
yeah,
them.
sorry.
Yeah,
Somebody,
both of
because
them.
I watched that game, somebody rolled up into Bradley Bill's knee in that
Yeah,
game, and he was like limping around. So
yeah. So he's questionable for tonight. And it's funny that it mentions the injuries. both of them says calf. We talked about the calf and, the phantom calf injury, but, again, with those guys out, you're definitely leaning Kings. And as we mentioned, the Kings do bounce back. So if I had to play something, it would probably be the Kings.
Yeah, great conversation there. Great conversation here. 50-plus minutes in the books. The fastest 50 minutes I promise you will find on the internet in terms of NBA gambling. We love to bring you the pace, the top plays, the analysis, and, of course, the conversation. It is NBA Player Performance, Wednesday, November 13th, 2024. A bunch of top plays. I'm on Brooklyn plus 9.5, Chicago, New York Knicks over 227.5, Detroit plus 5.5, a collaboration with the coach, Lakers buy hat engaged, minus 6.5, and Washington Spurs under 224. Junior on the Boston team total over 113.5. A sharp look on the Knicks minus 4.5, and under Cleveland, Philadelphia 218.5. We appreciate you guys immensely connecting with the show. The views are skyrocketing. We love to bring it to you guys. Please drop likes, thumbs up, and comments. I will comment back, and we will continue the conversation. Have a beautiful afternoon. We will be back here tomorrow, one game, and it is an opportunity to dominate. Signing off, I am the Shark. J.A. Cavaliers in the background, the legend himself. For Luke, traveling in New Jersey today, and Junior, and of course, Coach, let's dominate.